I married Sophie straight out of college. We were 22, fresh-faced, and full of the kind of boundless optimism that only youth and ignorance can provide. She was vibrant, with a laugh that could turn heads and a quick wit that always kept me on my toes. I, Ethan Cole, was a civil engineering student, methodical, grounded, perhaps a little too serious for my age, but utterly devoted. We weren't perfect, no couple ever is, but I believed in us. I believed in the quiet comfort of our shared life, the unspoken promises whispered in the dark, the sturdy foundation we were meticulously building brick by brick. My world was orderly, logical, designed for stability, and Sophie was the beautiful, unpredictable variable that made it feel complete. We bought a small house, fixed it up ourselves over weekends, painted the walls colors Sophie chose, and filled it with hand-me-down furniture and the burgeoning dreams of a future. I started my own small construction company, Cole Dynamics, a testament to my ambition and my belief in building things that last. Sophie worked as a marketing manager, a whirlwind of energy, always pushing me to be more sociable, to relax. We had our disagreements, our petty arguments over chores or finances, but they always dissolved into laughter or a comforting embrace. I thought we were unshakable. I thought we were the real deal. Until one Tuesday, a day as ordinary as any other, the kind of day you'd never suspect would become the defining moment of your life. I was supposed to be at a site inspection all day, overseeing a new bridge foundation, but a critical material delivery was delayed, pushing back the schedule. Instead of staying late, I decided to head home, arriving unexpectedly early. The smell of damp concrete and fresh-cut lumber still clung to my clothes, an ironic scent for the domestic scene I was about to walk into. The front door was unlocked, a small detail, but one that pricked at my subconscious. Sophie was usually so fastidious. I heard muffled sounds from our bedroom, not the usual sounds of her getting ready for the gym or the television. It was a low murmur, then a soft gasp, a sound that sent a jolt of ice through my veins. My heart, which moments before had been beating with the mundane rhythm of an ordinary afternoon, began to pound with a frantic, animalistic dread. I walked down the short hallway, each step feeling impossibly heavy, dread coalescing into a tangible weight in my gut. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and there they were. My wife, Sophie, in our bed, tangled in the sheets, her hair a disheveled halo against the pillows. And beside her, impossibly, disgustingly, was my younger brother, Ryan. His face, usually a mirror of my own in its basic features, was contorted in a mixture of surprise and something far uglier. No panic, no screams, not from me. The air itself seemed to solidify, trapping all sound, all emotion, in a horrifying tableau. They didn't even try to hide it, didn't scramble, didn't flail for covers. It was as if they had been caught, yes, but also as if they had known, deep down, that this moment was inevitable. Sophie, propped against the pillows, her eyes, usually so expressive, were strangely flat, devoid of real apology or even shock. "It just happened, Ethan," she said, her voice a monotone, as if she were commenting on the weather. As if this, the shattering of my world, the desecration of everything I held sacred, was merely an inconvenience, an unplanned detour. Ryan, caught in the act, didn't say anything. His mouth, usually quick with a joke or a sarcastic remark, hung slightly open. His eyes flickered with a fleeting, childish guilt, a flicker that lasted perhaps a quarter of a second. Then, it was gone, quickly drowned out by something far more unsettling, a triumphant gleam, a perverse pride, a barely concealed smirk as if he had finally, truly won something from me. The older brother, the successful one, the one who always seemed to have it together. I saw the thought forming behind his eyes, a vulgar graffiti on the clean slate of my life. I took what was yours. I finally beat you. That day, something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet, devastating sound of a foundation shifting, of rebar snapping under impossible strain. The carefully constructed edifice of my life, my marriage, my family, crumbled in that single, horrifying instant. And then, as the dust settled in my mind, it hardened into a resolve as cold and impenetrable as the steel beams I designed, as unyielding as the concrete I poured. The immediate shock gave way to a chilling clarity. The pain was still there, a raw, burning wound, but it was quickly overshadowed by a terrifying, strategic calm. I left, calmly. My movements were slow, deliberate, each step heavy with the weight of this new, terrible knowledge. No begging. No fighting. No desperate pleas for explanation or reconciliation. What was there to explain? What could reconcile this? Just silence. A terrifying, absolute silence that seemed to vibrate with an unexpressed fury, a terrifying emptiness that I knew, even then, would haunt them far more than any outburst ever could. I closed the bedroom door softly behind me, the click echoing like a death knell for the life I'd known, for the man I had been just moments before. I walked out of the house, got into my car, and drove. Not to a friend's house, not to my parents'. I drove to a deserted stretch of highway, parked, and simply sat there, watching the sun set, plotting. The initial week was a blur, or rather, a daze. My body moved through the motions of work, of eating, of sleeping, but my mind was a hive of frantic, calculating activity. I wasn't in a daze out of grief, not truly. Grief was a luxury I couldn't afford, an indulgence that would weaken my resolve. My mind, usually focused on structural integrity, load-bearing capacities, and the physics of construction, was now singularly consumed by a different kind of architecture, the meticulous, precise construction of their downfall. Every thought, every breath, every waking moment was dedicated to this new, all-consuming project. Sophie, predictably, wanted to talk things through. Her texts and calls were a relentless deluge of flimsy excuses, hollow justifications. It was a mistake, she'd type, followed by 100 emojis that were meant to convey remorse, but only screamed desperation. I still love you, Ethan, but I just fell for Ryan too. It's complicated. Complicated? There was nothing complicated about it. It was simple, brutal betrayal. She wanted to rationalize her infidelity, to dilute the blame, to make me a participant in her messy narrative. She suggested couples counseling, individual therapy, a break for us to figure things out. She even dared to cry on the phone, her voice thick with crocodile tears. Each word, each feigned emotion, fueled the cold fire within me. Ryan, equally predictable in his belated, clumsy attempt at damage control, messaged me. Ethan, man, we need to clear the air. It was never supposed to go this far. His words reeked of self-preservation, not remorse. He was scared of what I might do, scared of losing his comfortable existence, scared of my quiet wrath. He offered to step aside from Sophie to fix things, as if their sordid affair was a broken faucet and not a shattered life. He tried to invoke our brotherhood, the years of shared childhood memories, the bonds that I now realized had been nothing more than convenient fictions to him. My reply to both of them was identical and delivered with a chilling calmness that belied the storm raging within me. It was a masterstroke, a perfectly placed emotional landmine. To Sophie, I texted, Sophie, I understand. These things happen. I forgive you. You two should be together. To Ryan, I replied, Ryan, I'm hurt, but I understand. It was clearly meant to be. I forgive you. You two should be together. They bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. The sheer relief in their subsequent messages was palpable. They mistook my silence for shock, my lack of immediate recrimination for weakness, my apparent forgiveness for a convenient abdication of responsibility. They couldn't fathom the depth of calculation simmering beneath the surface. They thought they had gotten away with it. They thought I was broken, grieving, incapable of anything more than passive acceptance. They thought I was the same man they had walked all over. They were so wrong. The divorce was quick, shockingly amicable on my end. I hired a lawyer, but only to ensure the process was expedited. I agreed to every term, every division of assets, every concession. I just want to move on, I told my bewildered lawyer, a seasoned professional who usually saw bitter, protracted battles. I don't care about the house, the savings, the furniture. Let her have it all. The house, once our home, was now a monument to their betrayal. The savings, accumulated through years of shared effort, felt tainted. The memories tied to them were desecrated. I didn't care about any of it. I had my eye on a different kind of asset, a different kind of justice. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Sophie and Ryan got married. The invitation arrived in the mail, a stark white card with elegant script, an audacious declaration of their triumph. I RSVP'd yes. My mother, bless her heart, was aghast. Ethan, you don't have to go, she pleaded, her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and confusion. She knew, or at least suspected, the raw truth beneath the carefully constructed facade of my forgiveness. She saw the hollow look in my eyes, even as I pretended a cheerful indifference. My father, a man of few words, simply put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed, his silence speaking volumes. But I smiled. A genuine, if somewhat unsettling, smile. I dressed in my best suit, ironed the creases sharp, adjusted my tie. I looked every inch the composed, respectable man they thought they had broken. I even gave a toast. My voice was steady, my words carefully chosen, innocuous on the surface, laced with a subtle venom only I could taste. To Sophie and Ryan, I began, my voice clear and resonating through the hushed reception hall. May your union be blessed with all the happiness you both deserve. I know that you've found something truly special in each other, and as family, I wish you nothing but the very best. A ripple of awkward chuckles, a few forced smiles. They didn't know what to make of me. Sophie looked nervous, fidgeting with her bouquet. Ryan, however, looked supremely confident, almost smug. He raised his glass higher than anyone else, soaking in what he perceived as my public capitulation. My own mother didn't know how to look me in the eye, her gaze fixed somewhere above my head. And as I spoke, as I clinked glasses with my betrayers, my phone, discreetly placed in my breast pocket, its microphone almost imperceptible, was recording everything. Every awkward glance, every forced laugh, every damning word spoken later in whispered conversations, caught by my tiny, silent witness. I had meticulously researched how to record discreetly, how to ensure audio clarity, how to store the data securely. It was just another aspect of my new engineering project, the construction of their downfall. What neither of them knew, what they had so carelessly forgotten in their feverish pursuit of each other, in their smug satisfaction, was that Ryan had been working for my construction company, Coal Dynamics, on and off for years. Not as a full-fledged employee with a strict contract, but as a consultant, a project assistant, a trusted family resource. I had given him access, believing in the sanctity of brotherhood, in the unshakable bond of blood. I wanted to help him, to give him a leg up, to share my success. He was my younger brother, after all. He had access to sensitive documents, digital authorizations for vendor payments, even access to my personal accounting software. I trusted him once. It was a trust he had not just broken with Sophie, but desecrated in every conceivable way. The decision to look into the company financials, beyond just the affair, came to me in a cold, analytical flash. After the initial shock of discovery, after the betrayal had solidified into steely determination, a thought wormed its way into my mind. If he could betray me in such a personal way, what else was he capable of? It was a gut feeling, a cold premonition, entirely devoid of emotion. As an engineer, I understood that a breach in one part of a structure often indicated weakness elsewhere. I started quietly, working late into the nights after everyone else had left the office. I began with the most recent transactions, then worked my way backward, cross-referencing invoices against purchase orders, delivery receipts, and bank statements. It was painstaking work, hours blurring into days, fueled by black coffee and a burning desire for something beyond mere retribution. I wasn't just looking for evidence of his financial malfeasance. I was looking for the precise leverage, the undeniable proof that would not just hurt them, but dismantle their lives completely. And then, I discovered something gold. Something glittering and undeniable, a perfect, exquisite weapon forged from their own greed and carelessness. Ryan had been embezzling, not in one large, audacious sum that would trigger immediate alarms, but in small, insidious increments. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. Payments to shell companies that mirrored legitimate ones, but with slightly altered names or addresses. Invoices from non-existent suppliers for materials that were never delivered. Digital transactions that routed funds into untraceable accounts he'd set up, or even directly into a secondary, lesser-used account of his own. It was death by 1,000 cuts, designed to be imperceptible within the larger flow of my company's finances. But it added up to exactly $87,000. The amount itself wasn't catastrophic for my company, but the sheer audacity, the methodical nature of the theft, was staggering. And the most crucial detail, the keystone of my entire plan, he had used my name, my digital signature, my authorization to sign off on some of them, cleverly burying his tracks within the legitimate flow of my company's finances. It was a direct abuse of the trust one had placed in him, a flagrant disregard for the access I had granted. The emotional toll of uncovering his double betrayal, first my wife, then my business, my livelihood, was profound. It was a different kind of pain than the initial shock, a deep, sickening realization of how thoroughly I had been used, how blind I had been to the true nature of my own brother. But even that feeling was quickly subsumed by the overwhelming need for absolute justice. I didn't go to the police. Not yet. The timing had to be perfect. The case had to be absolutely unassailable, a legal concrete block that would crush them without a trace of a crack. This wasn't about a quick arrest. It was about a public, undeniable downfall, a slow unraveling of their carefully constructed facade. Instead, I gathered everything. Every email exchanged with fictitious vendors I'd painstakingly traced. Every forged invoice bearing my digital signature I'd cross-referenced. Every detailed payment trail leading back to Ryan's personal accounts or the dummy corporations he'd set up. Every single breadcrumb he had left behind, I meticulously collected, categorized, and timestamped. It was a vast, damning tapestry of deceit. And I wasn't alone. My best friend, Melissa Green, was my quiet, indispensable ally. Melissa was a paralegal at a prestigious corporate law firm downtown. She was quiet, observant, and possessed a mind like a steel trap. We had been friends since college, sharing a love for obscure documentaries and long, rambling conversations about life. She knew my character better than anyone, saw past my outward composure to the core of loyalty and, now, the simmering resolve for justice. When I first approached her, laying out the raw, ugly truth of Sophie and Ryan, she simply listened, her expression calm, her eyes reflecting a quiet fury on my behalf. When I then revealed the embezzlement, her eyebrows shot up. "Ethan," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "this changes everything." She became my co-conspirator, my legal architect. With her encyclopedic knowledge of legal loopholes, her meticulous attention to detail, and her calm, methodical approach, we built an airtight case. She showed me how to organize the evidence into a compelling narrative, how to identify the crucial details that would stand up in court, and how to understand the precise legal framework we needed to operate within. We cross-referenced, double-checked, and triple-verified every single piece of information, ensuring not a single thread was loose. We knew we had a solid case for embezzlement, but we needed one more thing, a motive that would be impossible to deny, a final, unshakable link between his past crimes and his current state of mind. We needed a trap. I needed to solidify his motive, to ensnare him in his own ambition, to weave a final, inescapable thread into the tapestry of his downfall. So, I reached out to Ryan. The call was difficult, not because of lingering emotion, but because of the immense effort it took to feign warmth, camaraderie, and a desire to bury the hatchet. "Ryan," I said, my voice carefully modulated, "I know things have been complicated, but you're my brother, and honestly, I miss having you around. How about we grab a drink? Just us. No baggage." He hesitated, a flicker of suspicion, quickly overcome by ego. "Yeah, man, I guess so. Could be good." We met at a dimly lit bar, far from our usual haunts, a place where anonymity was guaranteed. The air was thick with the scent of stale beer and unspoken tension. Ryan, ever the peacock, arrived in a flashy suit, a little too tight, a little too expensive for his actual income. He was beaming, basking in the glow of his recent marriage to Sophie, oblivious to the sword hanging over his head. He talked incessantly about the wedding, about Sophie, about their future plans, his voice booming slightly louder than necessary, as if trying to convince himself as much as me. I listened, nodding, offering non-committal affirmations. I ordered us a round of expensive whiskey, encouraging him to drink, to loosen his tongue. I maintained a facade of fraternal interest, a quiet observer of his hubris. I asked about their future plans, feigning casual interest. "So, any big dreams for you and Soph now that you're settled?" He grinned, a wide, self-satisfied smile. "Oh, just the usual. Thinking about buying a second home, maybe something out in the Hamptons. Sophie's always wanted a place by the water, and I've been kicking around the idea of really building something for myself, not just working for someone else. Branch out, start my own venture. Finally have the life I felt I deserved." The words were like poison, but I swallowed them down, keeping my expression neutral. The life you felt you deserved. That phrase, delivered with such an entitled swagger, confirmed every suspicion. He wasn't just my brother who made a mistake. He was a parasite, feeding on my success, believing it was rightfully his. Then, I leaned in, lowering my voice conspiratorially, as if sharing a profound secret. "Ryan," I said, my gaze steady, "I've been doing a lot of thinking about coal dynamics. Things are really expanding, and frankly, I'm spread thin. I'm thinking about bringing on a serious partner. Someone I can trust implicitly with the operational side, while I focus on the big picture. And I was actually thinking of naming you a business partner again. A real partner this time, with a substantial share of the profits, a proper equity stake. His eyes, already bright with the sheen of cheap whiskey, widened. He practically salivated. He grinned like a kid getting candy, the greedy glint unmistakable. The sheer thought of tangible, undeniable wealth and status, of finally being Ethan Cole's equal, was intoxicating to him. He was so predictable, so easily swayed by the promise of more money, more power, more of what he believed he had been denied for so long. He didn't question it, didn't wonder why, after everything, I would offer him such a lifeline. He just saw the opportunity. A week later, I sent him a meticulously crafted set of documents. Melissa and I had spent weeks on them. They looked absolutely real. The authentic Cole Dynamics letterhead, the corporate seal, the dense legal jargon, the formal structure of a partnership agreement. It was all there, professionally presented, a masterpiece of legal deception. But it was completely fabricated, a legal mirage designed to trap a fool. The core of the trap lay in a seemingly innocuous clause, buried deep within the legalese, nestled between paragraphs on intellectual property rights and liability waivers. It stated, in carefully worded legal terms, that given the unique nature of this new partnership and the complete trust reestablished between the parties, the company, Cole Dynamics, shall hereby waive any and all review of past financial records and prior accounting practices related to Mr. Ryan Cole's previous contractual work with the company. It was a golden ticket, a tacit acknowledgement of his past transgressions, granting him apparent immunity. It was the perfect lure, designed to appeal to his deepest fear, exposure, and his greatest desire, unearned wealth. It implicitly communicated, I know you skimmed, but let's just make it official and move forward. It was the ultimate psychological manipulation. I sent the documents via certified mail, requiring a signature upon receipt. He signed, eagerly. Without reading, I suspected, blinded by the perceived windfall. And even better, Sophie, ever the co-conspirator, ever complicit in his schemes, ever the willing participant in his rise, co-signed as a witness. Her signature, elegant and familiar, cemented her own culpability, binding her irrevocably to his fate. She didn't question why Ethan, the man she'd so casually discarded, would offer her new husband such a grand opportunity. She simply accepted it as another gift from the universe, another sign that they were destined for greatness. That was the final piece. The perfect, irrefutable evidence of a conscious act, of a deliberate attempt to cover up his crimes under the guise of a new, legitimate agreement. He had willingly, knowingly, signed away his last vestige of plausible deniability. The trap was sprung. The clock began to tick. 2 weeks later, the day I received the signed, returned partnership documents, I knew it was time. The file I had compiled, meticulously organized by Melissa, was thick, a damning narrative of betrayal and calculated theft. Every email, every invoice, every forged signature, every painstakingly tracked payment, every hidden recording, every piece of financial evidence Melissa and I had compiled, was now bound together, undeniable and irrefutable. It was a narrative laid out with forensic precision, a structural failure of moral character exposed beam by beam. I made an appointment with Detective Karen Mendez. Melissa had pulled strings to get me in, vouching for my character and the meticulousness of my documentation. Detective Mendez was a no-nonsense, sharp-witted investigator, known for her relentless pursuit of justice, especially in white-collar fraud cases. She had a reputation for seeing through the smoke and mirrors of financial deception. I walked into her office, a sterile, utilitarian space filled with overflowing file cabinets and the faint smell of old coffee. Detective Mendez, a woman in her late 40s with keen, intelligent eyes that seemed to miss nothing, gestured to a chair. "Mr. Cole," she said, her voice gravelly, "Melissa said you have something for me. Something significant." I placed the hefty binder on her desk. "Detective," I began, my voice calm, devoid of the emotion that had fueled this entire endeavor, "this isn't just about significant. It's about systemic fraud, a pattern of embezzlement, and a calculated abuse of trust that spans years." I spoke for an hour, detailing everything. The affair, my initial forgiveness, Ryan's history with my company, the discovery of the initial fraud, the meticulous collection of evidence, Melissa's expert assistance, and finally, the elaborate trap I had set. I watched her face as I spoke, Seeing her initial skepticism, the standard reaction to a jilted spouse with a grievance, slowly morphed into grim understanding, then a growing professional interest. Her eyes, which had initially been assessing my emotional state, now scanned the detailed spreadsheets, the highlighted transactions, the copies of the forged invoices. "You said you had recordings," she asked, her voice low, almost a whisper, of Ryan admitting, indirectly, to his desire for unearned wealth, and of the wedding toast where I subtly alluded to his nature, which he misinterpreted as my weakness. "And the signed partnership, agreement, detective, that's the real kicker." He signed a document explicitly waiving review of past financial records, indicating a clear intent to conceal. She picked up the fabricated partnership agreement, her thumb tracing the signatures. "This is sophisticated, Mr. Cole. Very sophisticated. I'm an engineer, detective. I build things to last. And I dismantle things that are rotten from the inside." She spent another hour poring over the documents, occasionally asking a sharp, incisive question. By the end, a grim satisfaction settled on her face. "Mr. Cole," she said, closing the binder with a definitive thud, "we have enough to proceed. This is an excellent, airtight case. You've done most of our work for us." The investigation began quietly. Detective Mendez's team didn't raid Cole Dynamics or make a public spectacle. Instead, they worked in the shadows, quietly verifying every piece of evidence I had provided. They subpoenaed bank records, cross-referenced IP addresses, interviewed vendors, who confirmed many of the transactions Ryan had orchestrated were indeed fraudulent. They built their own case, confirming my findings, strengthening the foundation I had laid. 3 days later, the news filtered back to me. It wasn't through a formal call, but through a string of texts from a mutual acquaintance, quickly followed by a breaking news alert on my phone. Ryan was arrested, not in the quiet confines of his home or at his new, unremarkable office. He was arrested in front of Sophie during a Sunday brunch date at their favorite upscale cafe, the Gilded Spoon, a place they frequented to flaunt their new life. Uniformed officers, in plain view of shocked patrons, approached their table. The scene, I imagined, was one of public humiliation, exactly as I had envisioned. The poetic irony of it was almost too sweet. Arrested amidst the very trappings of the life they had built on deceit and betrayal. My phone rang. It was Sophie. Her name flashed on the screen, a beacon of her impending agony. I took a deep breath, the taste of victory already sweet on my tongue, and answered. Her voice was a ragged shriek of disbelief and fury, punctuated by choked sobs. "What have you done, Ethan? What have you done to him? They've arrested Ryan. They're saying he stole from you. You told us you forgave us. You promised." I listened, silently, allowing her to unravel. Each accusation, each panicked question, each desperate cry was a testament to her naivete, her belief that she could escape consequences simply by moving on. When her voice finally faltered, when the sobs became dry, rasping gasps, I calmly said, each word a cold, deliberate icicle, cutting through her delusion. "You betrayed me, Sophie. You and my own brother. You thought you could walk all over me, take what you wanted, and that I'd just quietly disappear. You thought I'd move on. And I did, right over both of you." Then I hung up. No further explanation. No engagement. No grand pronouncement. Just the stark, unvarnished truth, delivered with the finality of a gavel striking wood. Ryan, meanwhile, was in an interrogation room, facing Detective Mendez's steely gaze. He tried to blame me at first, claimed I set him up, that I fabricated everything to get revenge for the affair. He raged against me, desperate to deflect, to cling to any thread of innocence. "He's just bitter," he yelled. "This is a personal vendetta." But Detective Mendez was unmoved. She had seen it all before. "Mr. Cole," she stated, sliding a printout across the table, "provided us with bank statements, IP logs, and digital trails connecting these fraudulent transactions directly to accounts you control. The handwriting on the actual forged checks, verified by multiple experts, is yours. The internal audits confirm the missing funds, despite Mr. Cole's efforts to recover them." She then produced a copy of the fabricated partnership agreement. "And this document, Mr. Cole," she said, tapping it with a pen, "which bears your signature and Sophie's, explicitly states that Mr. Ethan Cole would waive any and all review of past financial records related to your previous work. Why would that clause be necessary, Mr. Cole?" unless you had something to hide. Ryan deflated. The color drained from his face as he stared at the document, the truth of his own trap, the evidence of his own greed staring back at him. He had been so sure he was clever, so sure he had outmaneuvered me. But the digital footprints were his. The handwriting on forged checks? His. The IP logs from his email? His. And the documents he signed before getting arrested? Just more proof he acted with full knowledge, with a deliberate intent to defraud. His desperate attempts to shift blame crumbled under the weight of irrefutable evidence. He had walked into the cage I built for him and locked himself in. The wheels of justice, though sometimes slow, grind exceedingly fine. Ryan's trial was not a protracted affair. The evidence, painstakingly gathered and meticulously presented by the prosecution, was simply too overwhelming. His defense, a desperate plea of being set up by a vindictive brother, fell apart under cross-examination. His past pattern of behavior, the clear paper trail, and most damningly, the fabricated partnership agreement he had so eagerly signed, all pointed to premeditated fraud. I sat in the courtroom, a silent observer, watching my younger brother, once so full of arrogant swagger, shrink into a pale, defeated shadow of himself. The judge's voice, firm and unwavering, echoed through the quiet room as the sentence was delivered. Ryan Cole was sentenced to 3 years in prison for embezzlement and fraud. He went in, a spoiled, entitled man-child, finally facing the raw, unyielding consequences of his actions. The news reported it widely, highlighting the family betrayal, the shocking twist of brother against brother. It became a cautionary tale, a brutal exposé of greed and deceit. Sophie, meanwhile, was left adrift. Stripped of her golden boy, her social standing in their shared circles plummeted. The whispers followed her everywhere. Her friends, many of whom were also my acquaintances, distanced themselves. The life she had built with Ryan, predicated on his ambition and her manipulative charm, crumbled the moment its foundations were exposed. She tried to cling to their love, visiting him initially, but the reality of his incarceration, the squalor, the loss of his perceived status, quickly eroded her affections. The financial struggles began almost immediately. Ryan's ill-gotten gains were frozen, his accounts scrutinized. She had been living a lavish lifestyle, entirely dependent on his and my money. Now, that faucet was turned off. 8 months after Ryan's sentencing, I received another legal notice. Sophie had filed for divorce. The grounds? Irreconcilable differences. The irony was palpable. Their love, built on betrayal and theft, crumbled the moment the true cost of their deceit came due. She was left with nothing but the bitter taste of her own choices, a public pariah, her reputation irrevocably stained. The best part? My company, Coal Dynamics, never lost a dollar. I had quietly moved the real money into a protected holding account after spotting the initial signs of fraud years earlier. My meticulousness, my instincts for structural weaknesses, extended beyond buildings to human character. When I saw the first anomaly in the books, long before I ever found Sophie and Ryan in bed, a cold suspicion had formed. It was a small deviation, easily overlooked, but it was enough to trigger my engineer's mind. I had acted preemptively, isolating the funds, creating a separate, untraceable holding account where the actual legitimate profits were rerouted. The missing $87,000? All staged. A perfectly choreographed phantom loss, designed to give him just enough rope to hang himself. It was a sting operation, executed with the precision of a master chess player. The audit trails I presented to Detective Mendez showed the losses, implying the money was gone from Coal Dynamics, but in reality, it had merely been moved to a different vault I controlled. Once Ryan was convicted, and the criminal proceedings concluded, I simply transferred the funds back into my company's main accounts. Not a single cent had truly been lost. And me? I moved. Far away. To a new city, a blank slate, shedding the old memories like an unwanted skin. I sold the house Sophie and I had once called home, severance from a tainted past. I started a new firm, Cole Structures, built on integrity, clear boundaries, and a foundation of unwavering trust. The lessons learned, though painful, had sharpened me, honed my instincts. I was wiser, harder, but ultimately freer. And in this new life, in this new city, I met someone. Her name was Emily. She was an architect, brilliant and kind, with a quiet strength that resonated with my own. She valued honesty, transparency, and most importantly, loyalty. She saw me, truly saw me, beyond the scars of betrayal, recognizing the unwavering core of my character. Our relationship was built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine affection, solid and true, unlike the flimsy construct of my past. I didn't ruin them with rage. I didn't allow myself to be consumed by the fire they ignited, to become bitter and twisted. Instead, I let them build their own noose, allowed them to weave their own intricate web of lies, of greed, of betrayal, until it became their inescapable prison. I watched from a distance as their house of cards collapsed, not with a roar, but with a silent, inevitable implosion. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't about grand explosions or public humiliation orchestrated by your own hand. Sometimes, the most deeply satisfying justice is letting people destroy themselves while you calmly, patiently, hand them the rope, with a smile. They thought they played me, but I designed the game.